Alrighty, so welcome to another episode of Texonnect Voices. And we're here today with Sam Adranyi. Now, the word on the streets is that Sam doubles in every area of tech, even though today we're going to focus on a particular area. So, Sam, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your professional background, all the many areas that you dabble in, and bring us bring us to what we're
Yeah.
going to talk about today.
Yeah. I think I can do that. So, hello everybody. So my name is Samuel Adranyi. I'm originally from I hail from the Volta region, but born and bred here in Accra. The sad part of the thing is where I was actually born is no longer in existence. Recent times, for those of you who are probably familiar with the license of a state serving area, my dad was a police officer, so I was born and bred from that police military barracks area. Um, but that's gone. And I am emphasizing on that because that ties into my story. Um, as to how I got into tech, because I was surrounded by a lot of those influences. But yeah, being in technology for probably a little over 16, 17 years, I've done pretty much a lot of things from small to complex applications. Currently, by profession, I'm a solutions architect, and by being a solutions architect means I get the opportunity to design and also implement solutions across the board. And the more reason why some people would say I'm not a specialist, I'm a generalist. I have my areas of specialty, but now being a solutions architect, I do a lot of things. I'm a polyglot in a lot of languages, but the areas where I find passion in recent times are cloud technologies, artificial intelligence, that's AI, ML, mixed reality, robotics, and IoT. So these are like my core areas of focus now, and a lot of the work I do now in recent times are around those areas in technology. Yeah.
And how did you get into cloud computing and infrastructure specifically?
So um, I like I said, I started generally with as a software engineer. I'm software biased. Even till today, I still do hardcore programming. I still program different
What
side of
languages do
things.
you use? What are your
So
favorite languages?
that would be C sharp, JavaScript, Python, and then C plus plus. So in those are like my top that I use every day. So every day you find me use this probably about combined about probably 80-90% of the time every day. Yeah,
And
every day.
once you mention C, we know you're legit. That's old school. That's old school. The young
Yeah.
guys don't know anything about that.
Funny now. I mean, that's a whole story can go into. Even the younger generations now, if you even ask them, those who say, "Oh, I do web development," right? And you give them React and you give them vanilla JavaScript, they will drown in vanilla JavaScript, because they are using
And,
frameworks that has encapsulated a lot of things for them. I mean, hey, productivity,
and,
we like
and
it,
and
but
the funny thing is, back in the day, JavaScript, we didn't even consider JavaScript as a language.
yeah,
It was like baby
yeah,
stuff, the old
yeah,
school. So some of us we
yeah,
started in C, and then
yeah,
C plus plus was like a bit more visual,
yeah,
and then C
yeah,
sharp was like the new
yeah,
school thing. And
yeah,
now that's
yeah.
interesting. That's
From Visual Basic,
Visual Basic and all that
VB.net.
good stuff. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
So
All right.
that
All
I
right.
mean, so that gives you some background from where I've come from,
Yeah.
to now. But I think the light bulb or epiphany moment for me in transitioning into cloud technologies was I spent a couple of my time in the States. I lived in the States for a while, working for a tech company. And
Which part of the U.S. were you?
so I was in the Pacific Northwest. I was in Oregon, so that's
Okay.
like way west. Yeah, so
Okay.
south to Seattle, where Microsoft and then in the
Okay.
middle, north
Okay.
to yeah. So
Okay.
I was in a tech company, and we had a solution. We had a proprietary solution that was used by banks like J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, a lot of credit, like big. I mean, big companies, huge companies that were using the solutions, and it was written in classical ASP. Now,
Mm,
if you've
mm,
followed,
mm,
which is
mm.
very old, if you
Yeah, yeah,
followed
yeah.
if you follow
We
the
started
tech,
with ASP, but later we fell in love with PHP.
I know,
Yeah,
I know,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Gone were
yeah.
the days where you kept your PHP and JavaScript and CSS code as that's your
Those are
gold.
Bibles, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because we didn't have all these resources around. You can easily go Google. Those were the good times. So this system was actually built on classical ASP, and Microsoft had depreciated it. So they're moving here. Everybody, you have to move to web forms .net, web forms. So that's when I came in. So I joined the company as so my title was
but
um,
originally Microsoft had front page that they used to do for front
yes,
end.
yes,
Yeah, so I'm
yes, which
sure they're basically recalling back then.
it was just more or less like like the way
It
you
was
have
web.
nowadays you have like
Yeah, yeah,
publisher, like you
yeah.
have
Exactly,
publisher
exactly,
and it's in
exactly,
there, and then but
exactly.
Dreamweaver
Dreamweaver.
took over. So
Yeah,
in
yeah,
those
yeah.
times all the serious
So
guys were using
Dreamweaver was
Dreamweaver
like the
Code Fusion.
beginning of the
Yep.
framework stuff. They
Yes.
made it visual and
Yes.
they gave that. Yeah, before
Yeah.
Cold Fusion also came
Code
along. Yeah,
Fusion.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
So
exactly.
those days, if you were Code Fusion, Dreamweaver PHP, you were the top guy, because that's where the dynamic programming era. So when I came in, my role was technical lead new technology. So I was supposed to have help transition from the classical ASP to the .NET web forms. And in those times, I mean, even still today, technology or architecture, people are still using the NT architecture. So for those who don't know what the NT architecture is, you have your front end, you have your business logic, and you have your database, which is the back end.
Yeah.
And or this all this could be running on different servers, and that is what they had. And they were deploying on we had an on-premise data center. So in the building, in the facility, we had all these rack servers, all of them, and you need serious air conditioning. And then we had another physical site in Seattle. Now, all this while, that was okay. Yes, AWS was already, there. And we're talking 2010, yeah, 2010, 2009, 2010, there. But this is a period we're talking about. And because we're a Microsoft partner, and I was in the States then, Microsoft had this project, this place they call it the Microsoft Technology Center. So what they do is that anytime they are releasing
Is it the one in Redmond? Is it in Redmond?
yes, in
Hey, I've
Redmond.
been there.
Yes.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there. I've
Yeah,
flown there
Redmond.
once. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So what they do is that anytime they're about to release, they have some new product and stuff, they do kind of like a session. That's way before build and all those things. So they do sessions for people to come in, partners to come and see what's happening. And I'm in Oregon, and this is about 100 and something miles drive all the way to Seattle. So you like almost 3+ hours. So myself and my other colleague, and so naturally, I am an early adopter. Like, I love technology so much that when I hear of a new technology, I want to learn it. I want to see how I can use it better. What I'm currently doing. So when I got wind of I've even forgotten the name. When it wasn't Microsoft Azure then, right? But it had some name, and I heard about it. I was like, look, I'm going to go understand what this is. So I took the drive, went to Redmond, listened to it. I was like, wow, this is cool. And already because I had been previewed to the fact that our solutions were running on-prem. And sometimes I'll sit in meetings where they're talking about the financials, and the IT guys will be saying, we are running out of storage. We have to go buy more drives. And almost like every other week, you are seeing from we're using a new egg and some other, they are bringing boxes of hard drives. And those days, it wasn't even SSD. This is pure HDD.
Yeah.
And we'll be
Yeah.
bringing
Yeah.
boxes of hard drive because we're running out of space.
That's just crazy.
And then they'll be like, the servers are, and the thing is, after every 2 or so years, they decommission the servers.
Yeah.
And they throw them in a storeroom somewhere and it becomes e-waste. So when I heard about this kind of new thing, I went to listen in. And almost immediately it clicked for me that, look, it means that we can actually provision servers, not worry about the cost. We can scale it when we want. And I felt that, no, this
And
is
this was the whole
cool.
beginning of virtualization and all that.
Yeah. I was like, I mean, this is cool because remember, virtualization was there, but it was still your infrastructure.
Exactly.
You still had to get the hardware, install VIX, whatever, all those things.
VMware and all those things.
VMware, and you had to do all these things. You still had to provision. And I remember my boss kept, sometimes when the bill comes and you're saying, I could see the frustration in his eyes that was there a better way? Exactly. Exactly. So after I came back from that session, it was like a whole. So I made myself the unofficial cloud champion. In those days, like the Microsoft Cloud champion. And I decided to try a lot of the things on my own, because remember, these people need to see, return on investment, value for money. So what I did was I took I took an instance of the application, provisioned it on the cloud, set it up for it to run in the background for like almost the same period, about probably a month or so. And I went to look at the spend. And then I went to have a conversation with us like, look, I did this in the background. This is it. Spun up almost the same infrastructure in the cloud, right? Leveraging those days, Microsoft started quickly with PaaS because AWS started with a lot of the infrastructure service, which people just spin up VMs, which was almost synonymous to what you were doing already. So I was caught, I got hung on the PaaS services. And when he saw that, and he saw the cost, and he saw that it was pay as you go, and he realized that, look, so wait, it means that we don't need to buy hard drives, which after 2 years we are discarding. I was like, yes. If we need to scale up, I was like, yes. So if you have to onboard a new client, we are not going to now spend money to buy servers to just serve that client. It was like, this is interesting. Like, so why are we not doing it? So from that moment, we started gradually migrating. So they created an account, had a subscription. We started migrating a few things onto that, and yeah, the rest is just history. Yeah, and that's when I went strictly into, because then it allowed me, because remember those days, if we're building a solution and you needed to test and host it, either you're using your own machine, local host, or you're trying to, and those days, if you were really following, it was difficult to get hosting from Microsoft or some of these dynamic services. It was just a few hosting services who could host .NET applications, who could host maybe some PHP, unlike today where almost everyone can. So for me, that was like, even as a developer then, it means that, look, I can sit in my house, develop something, just put it onto the cloud. I don't need to worry about servers. I don't need to worry about downtime.
You needed to have a special DNS server to make sure
exactly to make sure. So I was like,
always the server is always hit, and make sure you're flushing.
Don't forget internet. Yes,
internet has to be reliable, dedicated internet, because you can't use
and also
internet.
Static IP as well. Because if your internet router goes off, your IP changes.
And every IP was charged separately. I mean, they had a different cost for having static IP and all that.
Yeah. So that's how come I think I became, and from there, I took it upon, I had to train people. I did more, more trips back to Microsoft, did some trainings, and pretty much, it's just been, it's just been.
So you're a Microsoft baby. It's been interesting. Even though I did mess with Microsoft a little bit, I also was in the middle of the open source wars. So there were some friends I have who, if they see Microsoft in a room, could literally be blows. I mean, that's how passionate they were. I'm talking about the type of nerds that were very, very, very passionate about their code. I've literally actually seen in a conference somebody walk up to somebody doing a presentation, grab his slides, throw it somewhere, and start presenting. I mean, that's how fanatical some of these guys were. So those are the good old days. So what would you say, now that you've matured in this area, what would you say your specific areas of cloud computing are?
So currently, I do a lot of works on the DevSecOps, so DevOps and DevSecOps, and also native application development. So these are like my core areas in it. So if you talk about DevOps and DevSecOps on the cloud, that is my area. Provisioning infrastructure that is needed to run stuff, and then also cloud native development. So that means that how do we get workloads into the cloud, right? To determine, is it PaaS, is it infrastructure as a service, is it platform, is it just SaaS, or is it just serverless? And so these are the two areas. And because I'm more of the native application on the cloud, it encompasses a lot of the services. So from like IoT, from AI to applications and all that. So these are the two major areas I focus in, which is the DevSecOps and then the native applications in the cloud.
And for our listeners who may not be very tech savvy, DevSecOps is for development, security, and operations. It's
Operations.
very relevant considering that this month is Cybersecurity Awareness
Mm.
Month. So,
Yep.
just to let you know that when we're thinking about security, we're not just thinking about the hardware, we're not just thinking about the hacking into your laptop, but we're thinking about your
Mm.
code as well, that
Yeah.
everything sits on, because that's where the bugs, the loopholes, and
Yep.
and that's why you have patches regularly coming in
Yep.
so that it can secure it from it having a door that people can get in. So
Yeah.
just bring you
Yeah.
up to speed, our audience. Beautiful. So I know you've shared some projects that you're doing, but
Yeah.
what would you say is your number one project that you're most proud of?
Um. Um. Since we are home, let's bring it home. I've done other projects that maybe for some NDA reasons I can talk about, but
Okay.
let's bring it home. I mean, I won't give the full details, but
Okay.
it was, we developed the platform for one of the government agencies,
Interesting.
and they needed to integrate into I think commercial bank,
Mm,
and also serve some huge traffic.
okay.
Um, the platform was going to be probably run for like a month or two, but they
Mm,
were very keen on high availability, making sure it's accessible, it's secured, centralized, all those sweet, good stuff.
mm,
And they, unfortunately, they couldn't rely on Nita to do that. So we stepped in, and I believe by the end of that period, we had processed a little over 20 million requests
mm,
on the
mm,
platform,
mm,
which was set up on the cloud.
mm,
So it handled all the peak times. It handled all, just it was resilient, and that for me was it got a lot of commendation from other sister agencies.
mm,
And then it integrated so well in the process that till today, anytime there's a conversation or putting such systems together, we are called to the table, to give our, expert opinion on. So that would be, I'll say that would be one of our, our biggest, I mean, when it comes to home, our biggest cloud success story. But then back on the story of, how even my company started in cloud. Imagine migrating all your workloads to the cloud. We had a whole floor, which was a data center. So think about it. And when
mm.
I'm talking about a floor, like we had a whole long floor, which
Mm.
was just a data center. And we had a
I hear
DR
everything.
center, a DR center in Seattle. Now,
Mm.
imagine if all this infrastructure was moved into the cloud. That's like,
Yeah.
you know, and all
Major.
because, yes, all because I took
Move
that initiative
tested,
to said,
moves
yes,
tested.
let's do it.
Make
Yes.
sure no links are broken.
Yep.
Make sure your
Yep.
databases can still be accessed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So for me, that is, I think that's, I mean, I tell myself that if I don't even take anything from there, I'm like, look, I can say, I can hit my chest and say, I pushed you to this, at least I
Yeah.
have changed that dimension, for the
Wow.
business. Yeah.
That's major. That's
Yeah.
major. That's major. So, how do you stay up to date with rapidly changing cloud computing landscape?
I mean, I'm sure you've seen, heard a lot about, I'm, I'm a freak, when it comes to technology, like I said. I mean, I'm sure if you're looking in the background, you're seeing all sorts of things in the background.
Mm,
For me, it's a big thing to be in tech and have the growth mindset, right?
mm,
I'm always in the position to unlearn, relearn, learn and
really?
relearn.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
always in that state. So sometimes I get into some, little disagreement with the wife because unless I don't hear about the tech or the gadget or the conference, I'm buying that flight ticket, I'm paying for that conference, I am buying that gadget just to stay up to date, because if you
So,
want to
that, so,
remain
so the typical
relevant,
scenario of the wife trying to hold you back from buying
you
all
know,
the gadgets because
you
men like
know,
their toys, and you reminded her, yeah, I let you go do your hair. You do your
yeah,
hair. Let me buy my tech. I got you. I got you.
that whole thing of, we say, cliche, having to do, have to do a PowerPoint presentation. Why I need to buy this? How that has a return on investment. How that invest
Exactly.
into me, that makes me valuable, and we can.
Exactly.
So yeah, so that's how I stay up to date. I'm connected to a lot of the forums, newsletters, articles, technical communities, and also for me, on the Microsoft side, I'm a 5-time Microsoft MVP on the cloud. So
Okay.
I'm an MVP, Microsoft Most Valuable Professional in the Azure cloud. So I get they have these things they call the PGIs, where from time to time you are in a PGI. What's new? What's coming? And they take feedback also from us. What do we think? So that keeps me constantly in the loop of what's new, what's coming, so that's how I stay relevant. I don't just sit and wait, and I'm like, because I'm constantly connected to these communities.
Exciting stuff. Good, 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 good. So, what are the key trends in cloud computing and infrastructure today that you would say are
um
shaping the future of the industry?
Yeah, for that, I mean, trust me, a lot of, from the Fortune 100 all the way to 500, all the big companies, one way or the other, are leveraging cloud computing. Um, and it's shaping and rapidly pushing innovation. Like I said, gone were the days where if you even had a startup idea, right, you had to think about infrastructure to host that technology startup, right? So like servers, hosting, and all that. But today, thanks to cloud technologies, right, you don't have to worry about the capital expenditure. Most of it is pay as you go, so it's more operational. And there are a lot of opportunities around that, enable startups to just get into it and get started. And the reason I'm saying it's enabling innovation is the fact that cloud computing and also the technologies that are backing cloud, I mean, the computing industry is rapidly evolving and getting better and better. And most times as well, that's also affecting the cost. Moore's laws was saying 18 months, right? Now it's even like almost every 6 months or even every 3 months, there's an improvement in the chip manufacturing process. Setting processes have become more cheaper. So it's making the cloud more affordable for different spectrums of people. So whether you are a hobbyist, you're just a one-man shop, you're just a startup, it's easy for you to get into to innovate on your product, focus on your core business area, and then just iterate and build on top of the cloud. Also, it is helping in a lot of other industries. Like right now we have AI, which is the thing, AI agent and co-pilot. Because of cloud technologies and cloud compute, we're able to now get a lot of these large language models that have zettabyte or whatever there is data that can process and do stuff, which is all an advancement thanks to how the cloud technologies and underlining compute are are growing and changing. So I'll say these are some of the, so now if you take every sector of life, right? Cloud technologies are allowing a lot of innovation in those sectors, from healthcare to finance to education to government. Yeah, I'll say that there's just a huge burst, in innovation.
And they are also reducing redundancy to a certain extent.
Yeah, they are. They are. I mean, we can take away and talk about that whole fear of even with AI saying, well, once this is getting better, we're losing our jobs, but it's also creating a lot of opportunities, right? So now, gone were the days if you were just a regular IT administrator, right? Now that's pushing you to, hey, have skills like cloud administration, DevOps, so that you can also, remain relevant and stay in the game as well. So yeah, I would say that there's a lot of opportunities in there.
Absolutely. So, how do you see the growth of hybrid and multi-cloud strategies impacting business globally?
So even to today, we still have hybrid, a lot of hybrid architectures or infrastructure running, which is primarily because majority of it is driven by regulation and compliance. Because currently in Ghana now, there are certain agencies that are not permitted to store data outside of our sovereign locations. There is a good and a bad to that, in the sense that a lot of the times, from my experience, these local resources are not up to par, or the infrastructure needed is not able to scale, with the innovation. So sometimes you have services or certain applications that are forced to keep the data in the sovereign, because of our sovereignty in local. Their infrastructure is not able to scale to meet up to the demand at certain peak periods, right? Because the infrastructure was probably not built or is not catching up with the need. That's one thing. What That's one big challenge. So compliance and regulation, and I
That's one
think
big. I see it as one big opportunity. But
exactly
this is
yes.
where guys like you need to be locked in a black room and come up with a solution that can protect us.
Exactly. Exactly. A lot of times, the conversation that comes up when I start talking cloud, and this is just agnostic cloud. The first thing they throw at me is, Sam, it's not safe. They are hacking accounts, they are hacking systems. They're doing, how is the cloud safe? How can I put my data there? How can, and I'm like, I go, this is my philosophy, calm down. If you go and buy one of these techish bulletproof, bomb proof, missile proof, whatever proof door, right? And you install it in your house, and you are going out, you lock the door, and yet you put the keys in the flower pot or under your mat, and someone comes to take that key, opens the door, and steals or robs you, would you say that door didn't serve its purpose? Would you say the door is not bulletproof or missile proof? No. It is your action in how you store the key that gave people easy access to your house to take stuff from you. It's the same thing. You have people using Gmail. They don't see anything wrong with it. But the moment you say, let's go to AWS or let's go to Alibaba, and they're like, yeah, we don't want our infrastructure to go to the cloud, right? Meanwhile,
You know, the
we are
type of
using
things they
Gmail,
put in Gmail.
which is in the cloud, right? So I think it is time for our policymakers to raise it and look. It's not, so far as you adhere to proper cloud practices, best practices, it is as secure as it's being in your bedroom. I mean, for lack of better words, right? And then also, if you are still insisting, hey, this is, I want it to be sovereign and all that. Almost all the cloud providers, from Alibaba to AWS to Azure, have something they call the government cloud, which is the same big infrastructure they have, but it's isolated for use for only specific government agencies. So America has one. America has its own Azure government cloud, which only hosts government infrastructure. I think they have one also for China. They have for different. So it is time for us to look at it and say, hey, look. And the truth is, look, let's be very factual. The amount of money AWS, Azure, and all the other cloud providers are throwing on their infrastructure, no single government can do that. The amount of manpower, the amount of resources, the amount of tech, the amount of investment, billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, making sure that the data center is not only up and running, security updates, new hardware, like performance. They're
The
doing all these
SLA,
things.
and that they can afford an SLA of
You,
99.9.
you get the point. There's no way any government infrastructure can. So for me, this is where like you said, the opportunity. Look, it's high time government and policymakers draw close to these people. Look, we know that we can't win in this competition with you, but we want a sovereign government cloud. Would you be willing to put just put a region? South Africa has one for almost all the providers. There's a region in South Africa, right? Could we come together and say, hey, maybe in West Africa, put one in Ghana, right? And there's always ECOWAS. You have your treaty and all that. So it's sovereign. You can keep it in this region. And it's going to be just a government cloud. right? I'm not saying hybrid is completely not. No, it is. But the truth is that for the level of scale and the level of what we want to get to in terms of innovation and security, trust me, you can't beat these cloud providers, and it's a fact.
The other problem, however, is also economies of scale. Sometimes our government,
Mm,
because what they buy or can afford is not much, these service
mm,
providers don't consider them as one of their top priorities, and that's where the real problem is. So,
mm,
if for example we had a vendor that was big market for them, it's easy
mm-hmm.
to dictate terms. But
Yeah.
AWS, for example, I mean, the whole GOG government will probably just be a small account for them.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had these issues with a couple of other
Yeah.
vendors, in GOG. That's why I'm saying this. And the problem is then when you need to be treated as priority, or you need to be have certain
Mm,
agreements, it becomes difficult because who you're
mm-hmm.
signing with is some downline somewhere, as
Yeah.
opposed to the top guys,
The
and
top.
that's
Yeah.
where some of the problems are.
Yeah.
That so I can see your issue about consolidating different markets coming together so that they have a
Exactly.
stronger
Yes.
voice in determining how their infrastructure is kept and how they are
Yes.
taken
Yes.
care of. Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you are all signing treaties and trying to sign up to setting standards. So if you're saying, let's take even ECOWAS for example, right? You are trying to say because we are ECOWAS, we want to standardize the way we do some things, some form of data exchange. There are some similarities there. You are creating a standard, right? So nothing stops you from saying, hey, you know what? Let's probably come together as ECOWAS so that we can get a kind of like a government or ECOWAS cloud specifically made for us. That's big market enough, right? Now, if we don't, and like I said, because these people are not open-minded about it, obviously they won't see business. But truth is, if you look at GOG and a lot of the government are the top spenders almost in almost every economy, right? A lot of the things they use are system based, and a lot of the challenges. And see, I know they don't publish these things, but a lot of these government agencies are breached almost on a daily. They just don't talk about it, from the porous architecture to probably not up to par standard practices, right? So I believe that it's high time we look at it, and it's high time we sit at the table and say, look, what is the reason for us saying not going to the cloud? This is it. Could we address that with the best practice? Look, this is the reason. This is the reason you can deal with it. Okay, check it out, so that we can review some of these policies. This is also actually killing a lot of it's killing a lot of innovation, because I am a startup, right? I want to do something that probably has some how do you call it, data protection requirement. And because I need to check that box, I can't deploy it on AWS, I can't deploy it on Azure, I can't deploy it on Alibaba. It means I have to find a local, service to deploy it on. And a lot of these, like I said, truth is not all of them are reliable. So you get to have issues, and that affect your innovation. So I see, it's a big challenge. It also opens up a lot of opportunities for a lot of work to be done. But I'm hoping that with all this advancement and all this improvement, some of these policies will be changed for us to consider having that.
Well, with the rise of edge computing and 5G, how do you see these innovations transforming cloud service?
Well, it's bringing the cloud closer and closer. I'll give you an example of how they work hand in hand. So we're currently working on. I have a startup, a product which we're calling Crafted Climate. We are locally manufacturing low cost air quality sensors. I think I have one behind me, but I can. So we're building low cost air quality sensors. So fun fact: Ghana at the moment has only two functional air quality sensors, as in high grade two. One in the American Embassy and one in the University of Ghana. The one in the American Embassy is not obviously public, so technically we have only one there. So they are not able to collect air quality data in a lot of places. So this is just centered in just some area. So we started a project to develop low cost, locally developed air quality sensors. Now, when we started, right, to build that, um, we had to find some way somehow to send data to the cloud. So we had our own communication protocols and things going using GSM, LoRa, and stuff like that. Now it's AI powered on the board, right? And so there's some edge computing happening there. But imagine there wasn't any edge computing. That will mean that whatever AI models we're using to interpret and process the data would have to constantly be going to the cloud. So imagine if I go and put it in, let's say, some village in somewhere where connectivity is scarce, right? I would not be able to do that inference, send that data to the cloud to do the inference, and then do whatever it is and then process. But thanks to edge computing and 5G and whatever is to come after that, we can now bring those models from the cloud into the edge gateways that allow the data to process. I can give you an example. So what we can do now is I can deploy, a swarm of these air quality sensors in like a district, using LoRa, be able to hit them about, 5, 6 kilometers and have a mesh. And I have an edge compute somewhere that has all the modules and processing. So these devices can then send the data to this edge device that still has the capability and power to process and do the inference. And then we can have then maybe either a Starlink or something to send the data to the cloud for kind of like a central collection for other places in the world. So without edge computing and 5G, this will be a problem because then you can't do a lot of these things. Let's talk about agri-tech, right? How can I process this data without going to the cloud? Right, and there are some situations and scenarios that you can't just be sending the data to the cloud all the time because of one or two reasons. But if you can do an edge compute processing, then that brings that intelligence closer to you without having to go to the cloud. So these two technologies, edge computing and 5G, are going to push things to the next level. Right, it's just unfortunate that in our side of the world, there isn't a lot of attention paid to smart or machine to machine communication or smart things. So we don't see the value of that. But these two technologies actually are going to pioneer a lot of things, make it more accessible, and make the cloud more accessible to the lowest barriers, minimum.
Nice, nice. Now you did talk about you've been talking quite a bit about AI and its integration in this. How do you foresee the role of AI and machine learning evolving within cloud infrastructure over the next few years?
I think it's doing great already. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Now, a lot of the threat modeling in cloud infrastructure is done using AI because the data is there. You can talk about resource provisioning, right? There is I'm sure we talked about. I think we mentioned stuff about infrastructure as code. Where your entire infrastructure is defined in some either YAML or JSON file that will determine what infrastructure to deploy that setup on. Now AI is making it more rapid. Like today, um, a lot of the cloud providers are leveraging AI in terms of even resource allocation, right? So they have a lot of data to be able
So
to
better
tell that.
predictions to tell
Exactly,
how fast. Okay.
exactly, exactly. So they are like, hey, you know what? We have data for this, but we can tell that we are getting close to the season where this project is going to spike, right? So let's move it to a more high available instance and deploy that. AI is doing that now. Apart from like the threat modeling, being able to expand services using inference and intelligence, it's just evolving and keeps changing and keeps changing and keeps changing. Today, a lot of the skill factors that we're using, either CUDA or metrics or performance based, now AI is being infused to be able to make decisions on just give it my just define, hey, this is a project I want to do, and then it will say, well, based on the requirement you've given, we think this will be the best services to deploy that project on. So those are a few things that are actually making it quite interesting. And AI, um, like it's just going to grow, it's going to get faster, it's going to get better. And the more as AI is also improving, then the cloud infrastructure benefits as well, because then it'll be able to do a lot of things in almost near real time. It can predict failures happening in the data centers and immediately maybe swap or change over and do the failovers as well. So there's a lot of potential in there.
So it's not just advising; it's actually doing the work or
Yes,
taking the
yes, it's
decisions.
actually yes, doing the work. Yeah, so it's not just saying, "Hey, I think no." So they are now getting to the point where they are becoming quite. They have enough information and high confidence level to be able to do the work and put it on autopilot in a lot of cases. Yeah.
I can see some people getting nervous about that, but that's interesting.
Well, that whole conversation about I don't see any anxiety and nervousness with this, right? Whether we like it or yes, certain processes or certain jobs will lose some things. However, I keep
Nah,
saying,
we're not even talking about the job. Those are very different
okay,
group of people. We're talking about sci-fi. We're talking about sci-fi watchers who are now afraid that one day you'll have Skynet just wake up and take over or decide
no,
that you know.
I don't think general artificial intelligence. I won't say we are far from that, but I think there is deliberate and conscious work being done to make sure that no matter how autonomous it is, there is still that human element in it. The principles of AI and the usage. I've been previewed to see a lot of documentations and stuff on that, and I think all the parties involved are very deliberate on that. Yeah.
I hope so.
I
So
mean, it's
what?
just like any technology.
Yeah,
Some group of people would would use it in ways not responsible, but
yeah.
the general consensus. But again, yeah, we just need to be, like you said, we need to be watching that space and be mindful about
Well,
it
we
as
need we
well.
need to be a lot more. It's not just being
Yeah,
mindful, but also we need to stay ahead of the game. We need to be
yeah,
smarter. We
yeah,
need to be more
yeah,
predictive. We need to be more proactive. We need to be more circumspect.
yeah.
We need to be able to tell the signs if
Hmm.
things are getting out of control, and it
Yeah,
has to be
yeah.
done within the context of your sovereignty, not just
Exactly.
waiting on certain people to tell you or warn
Yeah,
you or let you know. So,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I guess the average tech person in Ghana can't afford to still be doing the under the table stuff and thinking that they're in tech. They need to be
No, no,
evolving.
no, no, no.
They need to
But
be
yeah,
evolving.
I think that's a conversation for another day, because I know a lot of tech bros that want to remain under the table because of a lot of reasons. But I think we're getting to the point where, look, you can't be under the table,
Yeah.
because it's either you are on the table to discuss what affects you, or you stay under the table and a few people take the decision and it even pushes you in the ground, not even under the table. So yeah.
So, what are the main challenges organizations face when migrating to the cloud, and how can they overcome them?
So first off is there's a lot of myth about migrating to the cloud. First myth is migrating to the cloud is cheaper than on-prem. There's a big myth about that. That's not to say that cloud can be cheaper than the prem, or like on-prem. The other thing is the lack of understanding or knowledge of how to migrate things properly, and that is what is costing a lot of people. So I would elaborate on that. The third thing is compliance and regulation. Like I said, a bank cannot just migrate all its infrastructure to the cloud because it's bound by BOG or the sector regulator to say you can't keep your data there. So that's also restricting moving resources into the cloud. um the myth part. Now, a lot of companies have systems and applications that have been on-prem for a very long time, and sometimes they are not probably sure how to do the lift and shift or migrate that workload into the cloud. Some people would move directly into if it's let's say if it's a legacy system, they are still spinning up VMs and still moving the workload, which is quite almost pretty much the same cost, but just a few things. The other aspect is also cost, because sometimes it would cost you less, technically, it would cost you less to deploy a solution as platform as a service rather than do it as infrastructure as a service. Now, there's a catch to that. To make your application functional or very run smoothly in a PaaS environment, most times might require re-engineering or redevelopment, which is where the cost comes in. So when a lot of people think about that, they just either keep what they have and do a lift and shift into VMs, infrastructure as code, or sometimes they're like, you know what, it's just what it is. We just want to spend more time to re-engineer to be able to make it cloud ready, and sometimes too, it's just so legacy, so old system that um for some weird reason, even infrastructure as code cannot support it in an optimal way. So those are the first two. And then obviously the third one is the compliance, right? So companies are not able to move into it because hey, their sector regulators say sovereignty, so you can't move into the cloud, as in the public clouds that are accessible. So these are the kind of the challenges. But in terms of opportunities, like I said, opportunities, you can migrate your workloads in the cloud and not worry about capital expenditure, right? Only operational, pay as you go. If you're going even serverless, it is micro billing. The time, the amount of seconds the service is running, that's what you pay for. For startups, it's allowing rapid innovation. I'll still use our crafted climate for example. When we started, it was going to be heavily requiring cloud infrastructure, or it was actually going to require a lot of tech infrastructure, which we didn't have to worry about to say buy servers, do this. No, we jumped onto it. We had cloud infrastructure. It was just there, so we were just iterating and iterating. um so these are the challenges and opportunities we see when it comes to companies and people, startups, or agencies moving into the cloud.
Interesting. Now, beyond the companies you've mentioned and the banks, how do most companies ensure security and compliance, especially when they are scaling their cloud infrastructure?
Yeah. So good thing is that for almost all the cloud providers, and that's the beauty of leveraging the cloud, is that a lot of them have done so much work to be certified. So ISO, DSSI, a lot of them have done, they're putting a lot of investment to make sure that their platform is already certified by some of these standards bodies, right? Um, and then also, like I mentioned earlier, DevSecOps, proper security and best practices in the cloud, are also helping. And that's the other benefit of AI when it comes to cloud infrastructure. Because today, and I'll use an example that's coming from the Azure cloud, Microsoft Azure cloud. When you set up your subscription and set up your infrastructure, the AI is now learning and actually comes and gives you, we call it is an advisor. So it runs through all your infrastructure and system and tells you, hey, I noticed that you used, let's say, infrastructure as a service for this project. But if you look at this, the usage over time, it looks as if you are not really using it that much. It would benefit you to move this into a PaaS resource. It will tell you, I've noticed that, oh, this service you've not enabled, let's say, TLS 1.2, or you're not using SSL, you're not locking this down. Per this practice, it will be good to enable or lock this down with this. So you get all these values, from working, and putting things in the cloud, and that's exciting.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Now, you talked a bit about data sovereignty and people's concerns around it. But what about vendor lock-in? Is that something
Mhm.
you've come across people complaining
Yes.
about? And how do you deal with it?
Yes. Yeah, so it's being a challenge, especially I know companies that are having multi-cloud solutions. That's probably because and that for a long time, when the cloud war started, there are some services that are cheaper, in one cloud provider compared to the other. So, and sometimes when you start, you are invested in this cloud provider, and you have all your data in there, and because there isn't any compatible service in, let's say, and the other cloud provider you want to move to, I won't say compatible service, but one thing we've noticed is that most of the cloud services have proprietary ways of running things. So maybe a storage service in one cloud provider is using some different technique versus storage in another one. So what happens is that it makes it difficult for you to move
I
into a
agree.
new one, exactly, even if it's costing you, lesser in a new environment. But it also provided a lot of opportunities for small startups to come in, because I know some startups that allow you to do migration from one cloud infrastructure to the other, because they sit in the middle to do mappings and make sure that whatever you're having is coming here. On the flip side too, the cloud providers themselves have put together migration tools that ingest data from sister clouds and bring them into their infrastructure, and we've seen
Especially
that
the
has
ones
evolved.
on open source.
Yes. So now we've seen that evolve. That is now seamless now, where I have seen a lot of times where I can pipe data from Amazon S3 bucket into Microsoft Azure Storage account, and seamlessly it works without having to use any third party tools. But one thing I would want to say, because I am more on the native cloud and the application side, is it is one thing I always go into when we are trying to develop solutions. I'm like, look, we need to build the solutions in such a way that you are not locked into one cloud. And I'll give an example. Sometimes people are doing serverless and they say, oh, because I'm doing serverless, I want to go the Azure Functions way, or I want to go the Amazon Lambda way, right? These are all serverless compute modules, but the way they process it is different. So if you go and build your whole infrastructure in Lambda, and today you're like, I want to move from AWS to Azure, or you build it in Azure Functions, which is also a unique style of building it. And like, I'm tired of Azure, I want to go to AWS. You can't easily migrate it. Most times you have to rewrite it to suit that cloud provider you want to move to. So we say that, look, because there is the opportunity to move clouds, try to develop your solutions to be cloud agnostic, so that today I can move it from here. I can, so like you're doing containers, I can put it in AWS, Alibaba, go DigitalOcean, and all these places. So yeah, those are some of the tips that I give out to people when we're building such systems.
Interesting. Now let's talk about exciting innovations. We've talked about 5G, we've talked about edge, we've talked about AI, and what it's doing with cloud. What
Yeah.
else is exciting when it comes to innovations in cloud computing to currently forward?
Well, behind this whole concept of AI cloud computing, there's also the quantum computers that are making it possible, you
Yeah.
know, and we are not talking much about that. But the infrastructure behind the tech, that's also a huge thing, because a lot of investment, like the GPUs, like the Nvidia GPUs, that's like powering almost all the cloud infrastructure. Those are interesting technologies that we look at. But if we're just going off of maybe borrowing stuff from the fourth industrial revolution, you have all the data generated. Cloud obviously is part of it. AI now and Copilot almost everywhere. But the benefit for me that I see, or all this new tech that is empowering, is the amount of innovation and things it's bringing out. I'll give you a typical example. If you've done stuff in multimedia, like game development, 3D art visualization, you need a certain spec of machine, right? Gone were the days you can't even use laptops. You couldn't even use laptops to do that. You couldn't. It had to be a workstation with some plenty gigs of RAM and all that. Today, look at MSI, Alienware. Because of technologies like GPUs from NVIDIA, the 4090 Plus
Do you
series.
remember when
Mhm.
these video cards used to be on the motherboard, and because of that,
Yes,
you had a
yes.
lot of restriction, and then when they
You
finally
know,
decided to separate them,
exactly. So look at the evolution of all these things. Today, if I tell you that if I want someone to work on animation for me, I don't even need the person to have how do you call it, a laptop that even is running maybe 16 gigs. No, I don't need that. What do I need? I go to the cloud, I spin up an NVIDIA workstation, right? And all I need is internet. And he just connects to it and is able to render, he's able to do all those things. Today, the kind of infrastructure that were used in making Hollywood movies or the next game, that whole infrastructure today is available to the indie or one-man developer or one-man filmmaker or two, three filmmaker group in the cloud. Thanks to all this powerful technologies behind and making it more accessible and more affordable over the period. Gone are the days, if you even had to render a 5 minutes, scene, it could take hours, But today there are render farms on the cloud. All I have to do is just upload the file. Within some few seconds, render farms do it for me for a fraction of that cost. So these are the things worth celebrating. And it's providing and making it accessible mostly for innovation, mostly for a lot of impact, bringing a lot of people together who would have, previously may not have been able to, handle or, do some of these things. And that is what excites me.
Wow. Now, how would you say all these things, including cloud infrastructure, are doing to enable new business models? What
So,
kind of digital transformation can we expect for companies?
oh, huge. Um, I think across sectors, right? Let's even look at telemedicine, right? Without innovations in cloud technologies and all that, we couldn't do effective telemedicine, right? So today you can sit in Ghana and have a doctor in India or Turkey, right? Give you a consultation, assess you. It's as effective as you being there, right? Today
And
we have,
we need that now more than ever, especially with
yeah, yeah.
the
Today
cost of everything.
we have smart technology. We have today, I can sit in my house and wear my smartwatch, and if it triggers a higher BP thing, my emergency contact people get it. Hey, it looks like something is happening to you. People that are that are diabetic, that are using insulin pumps, that are smart pumps, are able to send data or collect the glucose level and send to doctors for them to do. Imagine that in the areas of entertainment today, for those that are gaming, right? Gone were the days you could not play real-time multiplayer action games. You couldn't. If the two of you were not sitting in the room with like controller A, controller B, and you're in the same room playing, you couldn't play multi-action real games. Today, look at Call of Duty, look at Fortnite. I can be here and be playing with someone in the States in real time, right? Powered by such technologies. And in that ecosystem, if you take even just the gaming ecosystem, right? How is it creating new jobs or new businesses? There are 3D artists that are creating new guns, new levels, new accessories, right? You're paying for it. That is enabling and creating new business revenues, right? We can talk about smart systems. Today, anytime I leave my house, I can control things in my house, right? Thanks to cloud services. Today, there are cars that are sending live telemetrics to the shops. So when the cars are due for servicing, automatically it knows that, hey, I need to schedule you for servicing for the next day. So there are
Interesting. My
lot of
mechanic
things.
would love that.
There are lots of things. There are lots of solutions. Like in some countries, when your roadworthy or insurance or your license expired, you wake up and you can't start the car because it's integrated. It knows that it's expired, and you can't be driving a non-roadworthy or without a license because of liabilities and stuff like that. It's opening up a lot of innovation. Today, like we said, speed traps. You go so much speed traps pick you, they send you SMS. All these things are cloud technologies. So powered by the cloud. So you can think about it from education, or as we say, from archaeology to zoology. There are a lot of innovations, and there is a touch point for cloud technologies and infrastructure in there. We just need to open up to it. And why what I love about it is that because of the cloud, people can innovate and do things rapidly. They can test ideas, they can prototype ideas real fast. And imagine if you had to go and buy 3 Dell Power Edge servers just to test a fintech idea and it doesn't work out. What are you going to do with those servers? Will you sell them on Tonaton or Gigi or give them out? That would have been a failed cost. But you can easily do that on the cloud. If it doesn't work, you just shut or delete all those resources. You're good to go.
So I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of infrastructure as a code,
Yeah.
but how would you say that is reshaping the way infrastructure is managed and deployed?
Well, I think I believe so just for some clarity for those who don't understand what infrastructure as code is. So basically what it means is that if let's say I want to deploy, let's say, a website, okay, or let's say a web application, or let's use a mobile application, and I'll need a server for the API, and I'll need a database to store the data, and I'll probably need maybe a back office system. So like I'll need 3 servers, and I'll need like a database. I'll need these things. Now, mostly if you go into the cloud, you're going to provision them. You say, "Oh, I want this, I want that." You're actually selecting and picking them. What infrastructure as code allows you to do is that whole process is converted into what we call configuration files or pieces of code that when run knows that, hey, I need to provision a server of, let's say, a Linux server with this specification. I need to provision let's say a Postgres server database with this specification. Now, so it allows you to convert that process into pieces of code or configuration that you can reuse. So let's say if you wanted to spin up another an instance of the same thing for testing environment, you don't need to go back and click. You can just even put that in a DevOps process, and you can just, from click of a button, it will use the same code to provision a new instance. I think I won't say I think for now it's become the de facto common ways of doing things. So even for a lot of the cloud providers, the first time you are picking and selecting and provisioning your services, it's automatically generating the template or the infrastructure as code template code for you that you can download and reuse assets. And I believe it's helping because add that to a DevOps pipeline, right? And then you can easily make modifications, iterate over them, and then redeploy, applications. So let's say if I had to, do some migration, all right, with infrastructure as code, once the new resources or the updates are done, I just need to run that code again, and all the infrastructure will be provisioned again with the parameters or the variables that I specify. And this is making deployment time really faster, and it's also making it a lot easier for us to recreate our cloud infrastructure in a more secured and faster way, in the sense that now that you can also apply access control to those code bases, so that not everybody is able to just run the code to create infrastructure. So I see a lot of, apart from reducing provisioning and resource times, is also helping maintain the code base for us and making it easy. So infrastructure code, I think, is already happening, but it is just going to get much easier, much streamlined, and a preferred choice of people to do things.
So let's bring the conversation home now. I mean, Africa focused, Africa
Yeah.
market. What's your assessment of the current state of cloud computing adoption in Africa?
So there, I would say that it is not as we would want. Okay, obviously because of a lot of those restrictions. If you look elsewhere, there's a higher adoption to cloud, than here. And also, I wouldn't want to say it's just we're still stuck on old ways of doing things, but I believe that there is still a lot of room for improvement for us, to adapt into, the whole cloud adoption program and asking, getting a lot of our infrastructure into it. But what I see is in the startup area, right? There's a lot more of cloud adoption, probably partially because a lot of these startups are in accelerator programs being run by some of the cloud providers, or they're giving you cloud credits and stuff like that. So on the startup level, we see a lot of them in AWS and Google. We're seeing a lot of them in there using cloud. On the enterprise side, from our observation, mostly companies that have got parent companies in the Western world are those that are quite heavy and key on it, because that's like a policy and infrastructure already put in place. And then on the government level, like I said, I mean, it's not as we anticipate, purely because of sovereignty, compliance, and all that. Would wish that at least there'll be some, you know, at least some hybrid implementation. Keep the data in your local data centers, but keep the application in the cloud. So that's like my observation from those three segments.
Now, what unique opportunities and challenges do African businesses face when adopting these cloud technologies?
Yeah. So one of the one of the challenges that I immediately identified when I returned, especially for cloud adoption, was cost. At least now it's getting a lot better, but was cost. Um, in the sense that, even so, let's say for startups or freelancers or people that wanted to get into the cloud, also because of our financial sector. So I'll give you an example. Most of these cloud people, because it's pay as you go, you need to attach your Visa cards, or you need to attach some credit or debit card to wait for it to, to be able to bill you at the end of your usage. But it's not all the cards that are accepted. So in the early stages, you'd had like, freelancers, students, hobbyists, startups not being able to, sign up to even try and use
Some of
this.
them are even just restricted to PayPal and
Exactly, so they can't, even to the extent that I went on then Twitter to say, look, AWS, Google, Amazon, all of I mean Microsoft, all of you, look, Africa is thriving on mobile money and mobile payment, right? Provide options
yeah, with the
for
program.
people to try and use Momo, right? And I have been shouting at this, but I picked up some articles and things that suggest that I think MTN is doing something with, I think, Mastercard or so, where now you can link your Momo to a card. So at least those interventions are coming, but that was one of the challenges, because then a lot of these people who probably wanted to go into it to test to use it were not getting easy access to it. The two is education. The challenge is not a lot of, even there are a lot of enterprises that don't have, I'll call them Azure certified expert to help them, to navigate those terrains, to say, hey, this is what we need to do. This workload on prem. This is what we need to move it to if we go into the cloud. So that is that is another challenge for them. And the last part, which is always compliance, is, look, if I'm a fintech, my regulator says I can't go to that place. That also makes it hard. But yes, the cost, the access, and then the skills, as in the right resources to help them do the migration. These are like kind of like the big ones.
Interesting. Now, how would you say local or international players, providers, are navigating the African market currently? And what's the competitive landscape like?
I think now they are realizing the competition. So AWS has been in South Africa for a while, right? Compared to Microsoft, Microsoft is quite recent, all right. And why would Microsoft put it there? Because they see the competition, or the benefits that a lot of the users who are picking or using the South Africa region. So they are being strategic, like you mentioned earlier on, in terms of looking for the numbers. But one thing I have realized is that in recent times, a lot of these cloud providers are trying to get a lot of startups,
Okay.
onto their platform in Africa, because, like we say, Africa has the largest number of the young generation, where in the next couple of years, all these businesses, if they thrive, is all going to come from here, right? So they are being strategic about it and now pushing and allowing and trying to get a lot of startups to use. An example is the Microsoft founders startup hub for founders, right? Which is giving up to $150,000 in cloud spend, just for startups to use the Azure cloud to innovate and build solutions. They have AI credits. They have more. I think AWS also has something like that. So that is one of the strategies I have seen, and they are pushing it, especially on the African continent, because, like I said, there are a lot of young innovators, young startups from Africa that, if watched well, will be the next, billion or trillion-dollar companies to come.
Interesting. Interesting prediction. So, finally, what role do you think cloud computing can play in driving economic development and innovation across Africa, particularly in sectors like fintech, healthcare, and education?
So, um, because it's now is now accessible, affordable, and it's just expanding and growing. And like I mentioned, projects like the Microsoft for Startup Hubs and all that are giving free credit to boost or to motivate or stimulate innovation. What's going to happen is that you're going to get a lot of people trying to create solutions and host them in the cloud or put them in the cloud. And yes, in as much as not all the solutions will survive or will make it, there's going to be a lot of them, coming in. People are going to learn, fail, reiterate, but that's also going to bring out a lot more innovations that will, open up. Imagine if even if there are, let's say, 100 startups, right? Let's say every quarter that are leveraging the cloud and the business model is viable and making sense. These people are hiring young people and bringing revenue into the economy, into the economy as well. So I see that the accessibility now, the availability, and all these other programs that are doing is now enticing and pulling a lot of startups, whether it's a fintech, agri-tech, and all these people to deploy and to use the cloud to be able to innovate. What's going to happen is that they're going to have a best of a lot of solutions, a best of a project, a best of platforms, a best of services that we're all going to use, and that's going to inject some kind of capital into the economy as well. And then also innovative product that will be exported. And that's what people are not talking a lot about, but not, yeah, but technology is also being exported in recent times, which is going to be based onto the cloud. And it also affords the opportunity for the young people to get skilled in cloud technologies. And the more you are skilled in the cloud technology, all these remote works and being here or getting remote jobs outside as well also helps. So scaling is going to provide jobs. Accessibility is going to provide a lot of innovation that in turn is going to bring revenue, inject revenue into the system.
So, Sam, thanks for your time. Any last words for our Tech Connect listeners, whether those who are in tech already, or those who are thinking about getting into tech, or those who are just users of technology?
Mm. Yeah, so I would end with a famous line from Satya Nadella, a Microsoft CEO. He said that gone were the days where companies were not seeing themselves as tech enabled, but today every company is a tech company. Every company is a tech company, and if you look at that closely, even if you are farming, there is a tech component in there. Even if you are selling, there's a tech component in there. So my last verse would be that for those who are already in it, the learning never stops. You need to be curious about what the next frontier is and how you can apply that to whether your project, your business, or a new idea. For those that are yet to get into it, it's it's a huge ocean. especially cloud. There's a huge ocean. You can be a cloud administrator. You can do the DevOps. You can do the DevSecOps. You can do administration. You can be a developer. You can be a data engineer. You can be an AI engineer. It's just massive. So from those that are already in, I would encourage you to explore. I would encourage you to try them out. I would encourage you to have a growth mindset, go test it out. For those that are yet to come, it's a vast land. Learn, be curious, go look into it, and see if you can make a new career with it. You can create a new business out of it.
Thank you very much, Samuel. It's been great having you. It's been great connecting, and definitely will give you feedback on how many people this is going to bless. As we told you already, we're touching 32 areas, and this
Yeah,
is one of the 32 areas in tech. So thank you for your time, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
sure. Thank you for having me. you,
Absolutely.
you enjoy the rest of the evening.
You too.
Sure.